This is Elizabeth Bennet, 20 years old, good-humored, attractive, and already school. She approaches Longbourn, a very rundown 17th century house with a small moat around it. Lizzie jumps up onto a wall and crosses the moon by walking a wooden plank backward. A reckless trickler in early childhood, she walks past the back of the house through an open window to the library. We see her mother and father, Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. Lydia and Kitty rush down the stairs downstairs.
Lydia, Kitty.
My dear Mr. Bennet, have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last? Do you not want to know who has taken it?
As you wish to tell me, my dear. I doubt I have any choice in the matter.
As Lizzie walks through the hallway, we hear the sound of piano scales plodding through the afternoon. She walks down the entrance hall past the room where Mary, 18 years old, the blue stocking of the family, is practicing, and finds Kitty, 16 years old, and Lydia, 15 years old, are listening at the door to the library. Lizzie pokes Lydia.
Lydie, Kitty, what have I told you about listening at the door? Never mind that. There's Mr. Bingley arrived from the north
With more than one chase.
and 5,000 a year.
Really?
And he's single.
Who's single?
Mr. Bingley apparently. Shh. Oh really, Kitty?
What a fine thing for our girls!
How can it affect them?
My dear Mr. Bennet, how can you be so tiresome? You know what, that he must marry one of them.
Oh, so that it is designed in settling here.
So you must go and visit him at once.
Good heavens. People.
For we might not visit if you don't know, as you well know, Mr. Bennet.
Are you listening? You never listen.
You must, Papa.
At once.
There is no need, for I already have.
You have?
When?
How can you tease me, Mr. Bennet? Have you no compassion for my poor nerve?
You mistake me, my dear. I have a high respect for them. They have been my constant companions these 20 years.
Papa,
Is he amiable?
who? Is he handsome? Who?
He's sure to be handsome.
With 5,000 a year, would not matter if he had warts and layer.
Who's got worse?
I will give my hearty consent to his marrying whichever of the girls he chooses.
So will he come to the ball tomorrow, Papa?
I believe so.
Give away, spot Muslim. Oh, please, Jane.
No, I need it.
Oh, please, Jane. I'll lend you my green slippers.
They're mine.
Oh, will they? Well, then I'll do your mending for a week.
I'll redeem your new bonnet.
2 weeks.
And I'll pay you myself, Jane.
Jane, look at me. Look at me. So that's the atmosphere at Longbourn's house, where girls argue about what to wear to the party. Lydia and Kitty are dancing in the middle of crowd.
I can't breathe. How am I going to dance all night if I can't breathe?
That feeling of my tooth just came off.
Now, if everyone in this room does not end the evening in love with you, then I'm no judge of beauty.
Our man.
No, they are far too easy to judge.
They're not all bad.
Few marvelous poppycocks in my limited experience.
One of these days, Lizzie, someone will catch your eyes and then you will have to watch your tongue.
A dazzling group enters the room. George Bingley, 25 years old, a good-hearted soul but prone to bumbling embarrassment, When his enthusiasm got the better of him, his sister Caroline, 23 years old, a victim of every latest fashion, counting herself superior to most company she encounters. And finally, Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, 27 years old, dashing, brooding with an introversion which could be misconstrued as heater. They are dressed in the highest modes. The music and dancing stops as the local people turn and stare. The newcomers, creatures from another world, make quite a stir. Sir William Lucas, 53 years old, a hale but unsophisticated member of the self-made gentry, hurries to greet the new arrivals. He lets them down the center of the dance floor towards the best seats in the room, stopping occasionally to introduce them to various parties.
How good of you to come.
Lizzie's great friend Charlotte Lucas, Sir William's daughter, an intelligent, sensible woman in her late 20s, comes to Lizzie's side.
So which of the painted peacock is our Mr. Bingley?
Well, he's on the right and on the left is his sister.
And the person with the quizzical brow?
That is his good friend, Mr. Darcy.
He looks miserable, poor soul.
Miserable he may be, but poor he most certainly is not.
Tell me.
10,000 a year and he owns half a Derbyshire.
The miserable half?
Mr. Bennet, you must introduce him to the girls immediately.
Smile. Smile at Mr. Bingley. Smile.
Mr. Bingley, my eldest daughter, you know, Mrs. Bennet, Miss Jane Bennet, Elizabeth, and Miss Mary Bennet.
It is a pleasure. I have two others, but they are already dancing.
Delighted to make your acquaintance.
And may I introduce Mr. Darcy of Pemberley in Derbyshire.
How do you like it here in Hertfordshire, Mr. Bingley?
Very much.
The library at the field, I've heard, is one of the finest in the country.
Yes, it fills me with guilt. Not a good reader, you see. I prefer being out of doors. I mean, I can read, of course. And I'm not suggesting you can't read outdoors, of course.
I wish I read more, but there always seem so many other things to do.
That is exactly what I meant.
Mama, you will never, ever believe what I'm about to tell you.
Tell me quickly, my love.
You've decided to take the veil?
The regiment are coming.
Officers!
They are to be stationed the whole winter, stationed in the village, just right there.
Officers!
Officers! Officers as far as the eye can see.
How will we meet them? Couples begin to form for the next dance. Mr. Bingley turns to Jane. They leave to dance.
Oh, look! Dancing with Mr. Bingley. Mr. Bennet!
Do you dance, Mr. Darcy?
No, if I can't have it.
Later, Darcy is joined by an exhilarated Bingley.
I've never seen so many pretty girls in my life.
You are dancing with the only handsome girl in the room.
Oh, she is the most beautiful creature I ever beheld. But her sister, Elizabeth, is very agreeable.
Perfectly terrible, I dare say, but not handsome enough to tempt me. You had better return to your partner and enjoy her smile, for you are wasting your time with me.
They have stopped at the edge of the dance floor, but have not seen Lizzie and Charlotte, who are hiding behind a pillar. Lizzie starts to smile.
Count your blessing, Lizzie. If he like you, you have to talk to him.
Precisely. As it is, I would not dance with him for all of their share, let alone the miserable half.
Later, Bingley politely dancing with Charlotte. As he does so, he catches sight of Jane dancing with somebody else, a look of pure longing, but he cannot dance every dance with her. Lizzie too is dancing and clocks this. Lydia and Kitty are expertly dancing too, laughing and chatting. Darcy stands watching, a look of infinitely superior boredom on his fine features.
I enjoy that so much, Miss Lucas.
How well you done, Mr. Bingley?
Mrs. Bennet, I've enjoyed this better than any other dance I've been to before.
Jane is a splendid dancer, is she not?
Oh, she is indeed. Your friend Miss Lucas is a most amusing young woman.
Oh yes, I adore her.
It is a pity she's not more handsome.
Mama.
But Lizzie will never admit she's plain. Of course, it's my Jane, who is considered the beauty of the county.
No, Mama, please.
When she was only 15, there was a gentleman so much in love with her that I was sure he would make her an offer. However, he did write her some very pretty verses.
And that would pay to it? I wonder who first discovered the power of poetry in driving away love.
I thought that poetry was the food of love.
Awful fine, still love it may. But if it's only a fake inclination, I'm convinced that one poor sonnet will kill it stone dead.
So what do you recommend to encourage affection?
Dancing? Even if one's partner is barely tolerable.
Mr. Bingley is just what a young man ought to be. Sensible, good humor.
Handsome, confidently rich.
You know perfectly well. I do not believe marriage should be driven by thoughts of
I agree
money.
entirely. Only the deepest love will persuade me into matrimony, which is why I will end up an old maid.
Do you really believe he like me, Lizzie?
Jane, he danced with you most of the night and stared at you for the rest of it. But I give you leave to like him. You've like many stupider person. You are a great deal too apt to like people in general, you know. All the world is good and agreeable in your eyes.
Not his friend. I still cannot believe what he said about you.
Mr. Darcy, I could more easily forgive his vanity had he not wounded mine. But no matter, I doubt we shall ever speak again. A letter addressed to Miss Bennet, ma'am, from Netherfield Hall.
Praise the Lord, we are safe. Make haste, Jane, make haste. Oh, happy day.
It is from Cousin Bingley. She has invited me to dine with her. Her brother will be dining out.
Dining out?
Can I take the carriage?
Out where? Let me see that.
It is too far to walk, Mama.
Uncountable of him, dining out indeed.
Mama, the carriage for Jane.
Certainly is not. She'll go on horseback.
Horseback? Mr. and Mrs. Bennet look out at the pouring rain. Lizzie rushes in the with towel and begins drying her hair with it. So in the kitchen we can see Mr. and Mrs. Hill.
Excellent. Now she will have to stay the night, exactly as I predicted.
Good grief, woman. Your matchmaking skills are becoming positively occult.
Though I don't think Mama you can reasonably take credit for making it rain. A footman opens the great doors to find Jane standing there, so she sneezes. Lizzie reads a letter. Kitty and Lydia are also present. And my kind friends will not hear of me returning home until I am better. But do not be alarmed, excepting a short throat, a fever, and a headache. There is nothing wrong with me. This is ridiculous.
Well, if Jane does die, it will be a comfort to know it was all in pursuit of Mr. Bingley.
People do not die of cold.
Though she might well perish with the shame of having such a mother.
I'm going to Netherfield at once.
Lizzie strides across vast muddy fields, sleeping as she goes. Netherfield is in view on the horizon. She stops to take in it, then carries on down an even more muddy track.
Miss Elizabeth Bennet?
Good Lord, Miss Bennet. Have you walked here?
I did. I'm so sorry, how is my sister?
She's upstairs.
Goodness, did you see her petticoat? 6 inches deep in mud.
Lizzie races up the stairs to meet Bingley halfway. His face lights up when he sees her.
Miss Lizzie, oh, I'm so glad to see you.
How is she?
She has a violent cold, but we shall get the better of it. I will have a bed made up for you. You must be our guest here until Jane recovers.
Lizzie goes into the bedroom where Jane lies in bed, feverish and ill. The blinds are drawn.
They are being so kind to me. I feel such a terrible imposition.
Don't worry. I don't know who is more pleased at your being here, Mama or Miss Bingley. Thank you for tending to my sister so diligently. It seems she is in better comfort here than she would be at home.
It is a pleasure. I mean, not a pleasure that she is ill. Of course not. But a pleasure that she is here, being ill.
Lizzie is reading a book. Darcy is writing a letter. Bingley is sad nervously. Caroline, obviously bored, wanders the room looking for distraction. She looks over Darcy's shoulder.
You write uncommonly fast, Mr. Darcy.
You're mistaken. I write rather slowly.
How many letters you must have occasion to write, Mr. Darcy? Letters of business too. How odious I should think them.
It is fortunate then that they fall to my lot instead of yours.
Please tell your sister that I long to see her.
I have already told her once, by your desire.
I do not on her. I was quite enraptured at her beautiful little design for a table.
Perhaps you will give me leave to deliver your rapture till I write again. At present I have not enough room to do them justice.
It's amazing how young ladies have the patience to be so accomplished.
What do you mean, Charles?
They all paint tables and embroider cushions and play the piano. I never heard of a young lady, but people say she is accomplished.
The world is indeed applied too liberally. I cannot boast of knowing more than half of a dozen women. In all my acquaintance, they are truly accomplished.
Nor I, to be sure.
Goodness, you must comprehend a great deal in the idea.
I do.
Absolutely. She must have a thorough knowledge of music, singing, drawing, dancing, and the modern languages to deceive the world, and something in her air and manner of walking.
And of course she must improve mine by extensive reading.
I'm no longer surprised at your knowing only 6 accomplished women. I rather wonder now at your knowing any.
Are you so severe on your own sex?
I never saw such a woman. She would certainly be first something to behold.
Miss Bennet, let us take a turn about the room. It's refreshing, it is not, after sitting so long in one attitude.
And it's a small kind of accomplishments, I suppose.
Mr. Darcy, will you join us?
You can only have 2 motives, Caroline, and I would interfere with either.
What can he mean?
Our source way of disappointing him will be to ask nothing about it.
Please tell us.
Either you earn each other's confidence and have secrets afraid to discuss, or you are so conscious that your figures appear to the greatest advantage by walking. If the first, I should get in your way. If the second, I can admire you much better from here.
Oh, shocking. How shall we punish him for such speech?
We could always laugh at him.
Oh no, Mr. Darcy is not to be teased.
Are you too proud, Mr. Darcy? And would you consider pride a fault or a virtue?
That I couldn't say.
Because we're doing our best to find fault in you.
Maybe it is that I find it hard to forgive the foolish vices of others, or their offenses against myself. A good opinion, once lost, is lost forever.
Oh dear, I cannot teach you about that. What a shame, for I dearly love to laugh.
A family trait, I think.
Mrs. Bennet, Miss Bennet, Miss Bennet, and Miss Bennet, sir.
Are we to receive every Bennet in the country?
Mrs. Bennet, Lydia, Mary, and Kitty are introduced to Caroline, Bingley, and Darcy.
Lizzie holds her breath as her mother lunges into familiar form.
What an excellent room you have, sir. Such expensive furnishing. I hope you intend to stay here, Mr. Bingley.
Absolutely. I find the country very diverting. Don't you agree, Darcy?
I find it perfectly adequate, even if society is little less varied than in town.
Less varied? Not at all. We dine with 24 families of all shapes and sizes. Sir William Lucas, for instance, is very agreeable man. A good deal less self-important than some people of half his rank.
Mr. Bingley, is it true that you have promised to hold a ball here in Netherfield?
A ball?
It would be an excellent way to meet new friends. You could invite the militia. They are excellent company. Oh, to hold a ball.
Kitty,
When your sister has recovered, you shall name the day.
I think a ball is perfectly irrational way to gain new acquaintance. It would be better if conversation instead of dancing were the order of the day.
Indeed, much more rational but rather less like a ball.
thank you, Mary.
The Bennet's carriage awaits. The Bingleys are gathered to see the Bennets off. Jane is radiant in the peak of the heart that only love brings.
What a fine, imposing place it is. To be sure, it is not. My dears, there's no house to equal it in the country.
I don't know how to thank you.
You're welcome anytime you feel the least bit poorly. I mean, you're welcome at any time, but not any less welcome if you know you are.
Mr. Darcy?
Miss Bennet,
Maintaining his glacial exterior, Darcy moves forward and, before Bingley can do so, hands Lizzie into her carriage. She gives him a surprised glance as their hands meet and then, unaccountably blushes. Bingley starts to wave violently as the carriage drives off. Darcy turns without a second glance. Caroline watches him narrowly. The family are all squeezed in rather too tightly.
What a high and mighty man that Mr. Darcy is, quite eaten up with pride.
Mr. Collins, an overweening sycophant, nervous and anxious in equal measure, sits in his black garb, hunched uncomfortably as he comes through.
His name is Mr. Collins. He's the dreaded cousin.
Who's to inherit?
Indeed, everything apparently. He may live as our stage, but even my piano stools belong to Mr. Collins.
When?
He can turn us out of the house as soon as he pleases.
But why?
Because the estate is entitled to him and not to us poor females.
Mr. Collins is ushered in by the manservant Gales. He looks around his future home with interest. Mr. and Mrs. Bennet greet him.
Mr. Collins at your service.
The Bennets and Mr. Collins are seated formally for supper. Mr. Collins is served some food.
What a superbly fitted room, and what excellent boiled potatoes. It is many years since I had such an exemplary vegetable. To which of my fair cousins should I compliment the excellence of the cooking?
Mr. Collins, you are perfectly able to keep a cook.
What a blessing I am honored to have. As my patroness, Lady Cathrine the Bold. You have heard of her, I presume. My small rectory abodes, her estate, Racing Park, and sea of 10 conditions to drive by my humble dwelling in her little phaeton and ponies.
Does she have any family?
One daughter, the heirs of it all, and a creature of such superb graces she seems born to greatness. These are the kind of little, delicate compliments that are always acceptable to ladies, and which I conceive myself particularly bound to pay.
How happy for you, Mr. Collins, to possess the talent for flattering with such delicacy.
It is pleasing attention proceed from the impulse of the moment, or are they the result of previous study?
They arise chiefly from what is passing at the time, and though I sometimes amuse myself with arranging such a little elegant compliments, I always wish to give them as unstudied an air as possible.
Believe me, no one will guess that you managed to be the first.
After dinner, I thought I might read to you all for an hour or two. I have with me 40 sermons, which speak eloquently on all matters moral, Do you know for these sermons, Miss Bennet?
We can see the girls and Mr. Bennet gather by the fire through the doorway. Mr. Collins leaves the room and takes Mrs. Bennet aside to a very discreet conference, out of hearing of anyone else.
Mrs. Bennet, you do know I have been bestowed by the good grace of Lady Cathrine de Bourgh, a personage of no mean size.
I have become aware to the fact though.
Well, it is my avowed hope that soon I may find a mistress for it, and I have to inform you that the eldest Miss Bennet has captured my special attention.
Mr. Collins, unfortunately it incumbent on me to hint that eldest Miss Bennet is very soon to be engaged.
Engaged?
But Miss Lizzie next to her in both age and beauty will make anyone an excellent partner. Don't you agree, Mr. Collins?
Indeed, a very agreeable alternative.
Lizzie laughs, turning around to laugh at Jean, then turning back and practically winding the tall, blonde officer spotted early by Lydia. He stands before her, holding a handkerchief that's down fluttering from her sleeve, a witty curl on his exquisite mouth.
Yours, I believe.
Lizzie is, for a moment, speechless, but then nods and takes the kerchief as Kitty and Lydia rush up from behind Wickham.
Oh, how perfect you are, Mr. Wickham.
He picked up my glove too. Did you drop yours on purpose, Lizzie?
Mr. Wickham's a lieutenant.
An enchanted lieutenant.
What are you up to, Lady? We just happen to be looking for some ribbon.
Right, for the ball.
Shall we all look for some ribbon together?
They come into the shop. The others go towards the counter. Wickham hangs back and smiles a complacent, witty smile at Lizzie.
I shan't even browse. I can't be trusted. I have very poor taste in ribbons.
Only a man truly confident of himself would admit that.
No, it's true. And buckles. When it comes to buckles, I'm lost.
Dear, oh dear, you must be the shame of the regiment.
A laughing stock.
What do your superiors do with you?
Ignore me. I'm of next to no importance, so it's easily done.
On the contrary, Wickham is almost impossible to ignore. Lizzie tears her eyes from his winsome features as Lydia grabs her sleeve.
Lizzie, lend me some money.
You already owe me a fortune, Lady.
Allow me to oblige.
No, please, Mr. Wickham.
Wickham gives Lizzie a smile and moves away to the counter. Wickham is escorting the girls home. He sat things down copiously with his word, as Lydia and Kitty wave yards of ribbon about.
Look, Mr. Bingley!
Mr. Bingley and Darcy are riding towards them. Bingley pulls in his horse, jumps down, and hurries over. His open friendly face filled with delight. Darcy stays astride, staring at Wickham, who suddenly sits his sword and looks at the ground. Lizzie watches him, his eyes stare up to Darcy and away again. Darcy's face is dark and closed.
I was on my way to your house.
Mr. Bingley, how do you like my ribbons for your ball?
Very beautiful.
She is. Look at her. She's blooming.
Lydia! But Lydia then sees around Bingley like Squirrel Nutkin, waving her ribbons in his face.
Be sure to invite Mr. Wickham. He's a credit to his profession.
Lydia, you can't invite people to other people's ball.
Of course you must come. Mr. Wickham, ladies, excuse me. Enjoy the day.
Bingley bows, principally to Jane, and jumps back on his horse. Lizzie turns to Wickham, but he has walked ahead. The mood of the day has changed completely, and Lizzie starts to follow him, thoroughly puzzled.
Will you come to the Netherfield ball then, Mr. Wickham?
Perhaps. How long has Mr. Darcy been a guest there?
About a month. Forgive me, but are you acquainted with him? With Mr. Darcy?
Indeed. I've been connected with his family since infancy. You may well be surprised, Miss Bennet, especially given our court greeting this afternoon.
I hope your plans in favor of Meryton will not be affected by your difficult relations with the gentleman.
No. It is not for me to be driven away. If he wishes to avoid seeing me, he must go, not I.
I must ask you, Mr. Wickham, what is the matter of your disapproval of Mr. Darcy?
Do you really want to hear? He ruined me.
How so?
My father managed his estate. We grew up together, Darcy and I. His father treated me like a second son. Oh, he was the kindest of men and bequeathed me the best living in his gift, for I had my heart set on joining the church. But when he died, Darcy ignored his wishes and gave the living to another man.
Why did he do that?
Out of jealousy, for his father loved me more than he loved him.
Cruel. How cruel. Are you sure?
And out of pride, for he considered me too lovely to be worth his consideration.
We pan through the bedroom as the Bennet girls prepare for the Netherfield ball. Betsy is helping Lydia and Kitty into their dresses. They are both wearing white.
Pretend!
We move to the quieter preparations of Jane and Lizzie. Jane is taking the curlers out of Lizzie's hair.
I still think there must have been a misunderstanding.
Oh, Jane, you never think ill of anybody.
How could Mr. Darcy do such a thing? I will discover the truth from Mr. Bingley at the ball this evening.
If it is not true, let Mr. Darcy contradict it himself. But until he does, I hope never to encounter him.
Poor, unfortunate Mr. Wickham.
On the contrary, he is twice the man Darcy is.
And let us hope a rather more willing dancer.
A long queue has formed to gain entrance to the ball. There are hundreds of guests. All the women are dressed in shades of off-white. The men are either in red over uniform or dressed in black and white.
You're here. I'm so pleased.
And so am I.
How are you, Miss Elizabeth? Are you looking for someone?
No. Admiring the general splendor.
It is breathtaking, Mr. Bingley.
I dare say I have never met a more pleasant gentleman in all my years. Did you see how he dotes on her, dear Jane? Always doing what is the best for her family.
Lizzie slips away into the next room. She walks into the dining room, which has been converted into a ballroom and where numerous couples are dancing, while others crowd the edges to watch. Lizzie thinks she sees Mr. Wickham among the dancers. She moves to get a clearer view. The man turns round, but it's not Wickham.
Have you seen Mr. Wickham?
Perhaps he is through here.
He's not here. Apparently, Agung was detained.
Detained?
There you are.
Mr. Collins, what a pleasant surprise.
Perhaps you will do me an honor, Miss Lizzie.
Oh, I didn't see your dance, Mr. Collins.
I do not consider it incompatible with the office of clergyman to indulge in such an innocent diversion. In fact, several people, her ladyship included, have complimented me on my lightness of foot.
Apparently, young Mr. Wickham has been called on some visits to town.
To be sure, dancing is of little consequence to me, but it does.
Though my informer told me would have been less inclined to be engaged.
But it does average the opportunity to lavish one's partner with delicate attention, which is my primary object of the evening.
Had it not been for the prison at Netherfield of certain gentlemen.
The gentleman barely warrants the name.
It is my intention, if I might be so bold, to remain close to you throughout the evening.
Lizzie and Charlotte come out of the driving room laughing and run straight into Mr. Darcy.
May I have the next dance, Miss Elizabeth?
You may.
Did I just agree to dance with Mr. Darcy?
I dare say you will find him very amiable, Lizzie.
Which would be most inconvenient since I have sworn to love him for all eternity.
It is your turn to say something, Mr. Darcy. I talk about the dance. Now you ought to remark on the size of the room or the number of couples.
I'm perfectly happy to oblige. Please, advise me on what you would like most to hear.
The reply will do for the presents, perhaps, and by I may observe that private balls are much more centered than public ones. But for now we may be silent.
You'll take us all while dancing?
No. No, I prefer to be unsociable and taciturn. That makes it all so much more enjoyable, don't you think?
Tell me, do you and your sister very often walk to Meryton?
Very mild weather we've been having. Yes, we often walk to Meryton. It is a great opportunity to meet new people. In fact, when you met us, we had just had the pleasure of forming a new acquaintance.
Mr. Wickham is blessed with such happy manners he is sure of making friends. Whether he is capable of retaining them is less certain.
He has been so unlucky as to lose your friendship, and I dare say that is an irreversible event.
It is. Why do you ask such a question?
To make out your character, Mr. Darcy.
And what have you discovered?
Very little. I hear such different accounts of your spasmodic exceedingly.
I have to offer you more clarity in the future.
Is that Mr. Darcy of Pemberley in Derbyshire?
I believe so.
But I must make myself known to him immediately.
But sir...
He is the nephew of my esteemed patroness, Lady Cathrine.
He is. Please, Mr. Collins, I consider it impertinence.
Mr. Darcy. Mr. Darcy? Good evening.
Darcy is surprised and turns round. During the conversations, Mr. Collins points Lizzie out to Darcy, who looks horrified by Mr. Collins' obsequiousness. Caroline sidles up to Lizzie.
What interesting relative you have, Miss Bennet.
Bingley and Caroline are waving off the Bennet carriage. Bingley is grey with fatigue. Caroline looks at his plaintive expressions and then looks at the departing carriage.
My dear Charles, you can be serious. We will be having a wedding here at Netherfield in less than 3 months, if you ask me. Mr. Bennet? Mr. Bennet?
The Bennets eat in silence. Jenny yawns. Mrs. Bennet moans. She is hungover. Mr. Collins comes in a state of agitation.
Mrs. Bennet, I was hoping, if it would not trouble you, that I might solicit a private audience with Miss Lizzie in the course of the morning.
Oh yes, certainly. Lizzie will be very happy indeed. Everyone, out. Mr. Collins would like a private audience with your sister.
Wait, I beg you, Mr. Collins have nothing to say to me that anybody not here.
No, nonsense, Lizzie. I desire you will to stay where you are. Everyone else to the drawing room. Mr. Bennet?
But...
No.
Dear Miss Elizabeth, I'm sure my intentions have been too marked to be mistaken. Almost as soon as I entered the house, I singled you out as the companion of my future life. But before I am run away with my feelings, perhaps I may state my reason for marrying. Firstly, that it is the duty of a clergyman to set the example of matrimony in his parish. Secondly, that I am convinced it will add greatly to my happiness. And thirdly, that it is at the urging of my esteemed patroness Lady Cathrine that I select a wife. My object in coming to Lumber was to choose such a one from Mr. Bennet's daughters, for I am to inherit the estate, and such an alliance will surely suit everyone. And now, nothing remains for me but to assure you in the most animated language of the violence of my affections.
Mr. Collins?
And that no reproach on the subject of fortune will cross my lips once we are married.
You are too hasty, sir. You forget that I have made no answer.
I must add that Lady Cathrine will truly approve, when I speak to her of your modesty, economy, and other amiable qualities.
Sir, I'm honored by your proposal, but I regret I must decline it.
I know ladies don't seek to seem too eager.
Mr. Collins, I'm perfectly serious. You cannot make happy, and I'm convinced I'm the last woman in the world who could make you happy.
I flatter myself, cousin, that your refusal is merely a natural delicacy, and as it is by no means certain that another offer to marriage may ever be made to you.
Mr. Collins?
I must conclude that you simply seek to increase my love by suspense, according to the usual practice of elegant females.
Sir, I'm not the sort of female to torment a respectable man. Please understand me, I cannot accept you.
Lizzie storms out of the room and out of the house. Mrs. Bennet crashes in through another door, hot on the tail of Lizzie.
Oh, headstrong, foolish child.
Headstrong?
Don't worry, Mr. Collins. We shall have this little hiccup dealt with immediately. Oh, Mr. Bennet, we are in uproar. You must come and make Lizzie marry Mr. Collins. She's so full she will not have him. Mr. Collins has proposed to Lizzie, but Lizzie declares she will not have him. And now the danger is Mr. Collins may not have Lizzie.
And what am I to do?
Speak to Lizzie.
Mr. Bennet and Mrs. Bennet confront Lizzie, who has been waiting in the drawing room. Perhaps the other girls from an audience from the stairs. Mr. Collins looks on sheepishly from the breakfast room.
Tell her that you insist upon them marrying.
Papa, please.
You will have this house.
I can't marry him.
You will save your sister from destitution.
I can't.
Go back now and say you've changed your mind.
No.
Think of your family.
You can't make me.
Mr. Bennet, say something.
So, your mother insists on you marrying Mr. Collins?
Yes, or I shall never see her again.
Well, Lizzie, from this day on, you must be a stranger to one of your parents.
Who will maintain you when your father is dead?
Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins. And I will never see you again if you do.
Mr. Bennet?
Thank you, Papa.
Lizzie walks through the other sisters who are gathered at the door but stops when she reaches Jane sitting on the stairs. Her face is white. There is a letter in her hand. Mrs. Bennet charges out and speaks to anyone who will listen.
Oh, ungrateful child, I shall never speak to her again. Not that I have much pleasure in talking to anybody. People who suffer as I do from never complain can have no inclination for talking. Nobody can tell what I suffer.
What's wrong, Jane?
But it's always so. Those who complain are never pitied.
Bingley, Caroline, and Darcy sit grimly in a carriage as it drives away from Netherfield. Darcy looks severe and turned. Caroline can't help a little smirk on her face. Bingley looks back longingly.
I don't understand. What would take him from Netherfield? Why would he not know when he was to return?
Read it, I don't mind.
Mr. Darcy is impatient to see his sister. We are scarcely less eager to meet her again. I really do not think Georgiana Darcy has a equal for beauty, elegance, and accomplishments. So much so I must hope to hereafter call her my sister. Caroline says that her brother is in love with you and has taken him off to persuade him otherwise.
But I know her to be incapable of willfully deceiving anyone. Is it far more likely that he's not loved me and never has?
He loves you, Jane. Do not give up. Go to our aunt and uncles in London. Let it be known you are there, and I'm sure he will come to you.
Jane is in a carriage. Mrs. Bennet kisses her goodbye through the window as all the Bennets look on.
My love to my sister, and try not to be a burden, dear.
Poor Jane. However, a girl likes to be grossed in love now and then. It gives her something to think of, and a sort of distinction among her companions.
I'm sure that will cheer her up, Papa.
My dear Lizzie, I have come here to tell you the news. Mr. Collins and I are engaged.
Engaged?
Yes.
To be married?
Yes, of course, Lizzie. What other kind of engagement is there? Oh, for heaven's sake, Lizzie, don't look at me like that. There's no other reason why I shouldn't be as happy with him as any other.
But it's ridiculous.
Oh, hush. Not all of can afford to be romantic. I've been offered a comfortable home and protection. There's a lot to be thankful for.
Charlotte,
I'm 27 years old. I have no money and prospect. I'm very burdened to my parents and I'm pregnant. So don't judge me, Lizzie. Don't you dare judge me.
Dear Charlotte, thank you for the letter. I'm so glad the house, furniture, neighborhood and roads are all to your taste, and that Lady Catherine's behavior is friendly and obliging. As for the favor you ask, it is no favor at all. I will be glad to visit you at your earliest convenience.
Welcome to our humble abode. My wife encouraged me to spend as much time in the garden as possible, for the sake of my health. I plan many improvements, of course. I intend to throw out a bow and plant and lime walk. Oh yes, I flatter myself that any young lady would be happy to be the mistress of such a house.
My dear, I think our guest is tired after her journey.
Lizzie and Charlotte are at last alone. They sit down in a charming little parlour that precedes the front of the house. Charlotte pours out tea.
We shall not to be disturbed here. This parlour is for my own particular use. Oh, Lizzie, it's such a pleasure to run my own home.
Charlotte, come here.
What happened?
Charlotte!
Has the pig escaped again? Oh, it's Lady Catherine. Come and see, Lizzie.
Great news. We have an invitation to visit Rosings this evening from Lady Catherine the Bull.
How wonderful.
Do not make yourself uneasy, my dear cousin, about your apparel.
Just put on whatever you brought, that's best.
Lady Catherine has never been averse to the truly humble.
Lizzie, Charlotte, and Mr. Collins walk hurriedly across a bridge towards the great house.
Your ladyship, Mr. Bull.
So you are Elizabeth Bennet?
I am, your ladyship.
This is my daughter.
It's very kind of
The
you to ask
chimney
us
piece
today,
alone
Lady
costs
Catherine.
£400.
Mr. Darcy, what are you doing here?
Mr. Darcy, I had no idea we would have the honor.
Miss Elizabeth, I'm a guest here.
You know my nephew?
Yes, madam. I had the pleasure of meeting your nephew in Hertfordshire.
Colonel Fitzwilliam, how do you do?
The dining room is laid for a very grand dinner. Footman waiting, thousands of candles. Lady Catherine sits herself at the end of the table.
Mr. Collins, you can't sit next to your wife. Get up. Move. Over there.
I trust your family is in good health, Miss Elizabeth.
They are, thank you. My elder sister is currently in London. Perhaps you happen to see her there.
I haven't been fortunate
Do you
enough
play
now.
the pianoforte, Miss Bennet?
A little, ma'am, and very poorly.
Oh, do they though?
No, not at all.
Your sisters, do they though?
Not one.
Has your governess left you?
We never had a governess.
No governess? 5 daughters brought out at home without a governess. I never heard such a thing. Your mother must have been quite a slave to your education.
Not at all, Lady Catherine.
Are any of your younger sisters out in society?
Yes, ma'am, all.
All? What? 5 out at once? Very odd. And you only the second the younger ones out before the eldest are married. Your youngest sisters must be very young.
Yes, my youngest is not 16, but I think it would be very hard on younger sister not to have the share of amusement because the elder is still unmarried, and to be kept back on such a motive. It will hardly encourage sisterly affection.
Upon my word, you give your opinion very decidedly for so young a person. Pray, what is your age?
With 3 younger sisters grown up, your ladyship can hardly expect me to own to it.
Dinner is over, and they are drinking coffee.
Come, Miss Bennet, and play for us.
No, I beg you.
Music is my delight. In fact, there are few people in England who have more to enjoyment of music than myself, or better natural taste. If I had ever learned, I should have been a prodigy. So would Anne, if her health would have allowed her.
Lady Catherine, I'm not afflicted with false modesty, and when I say I play poorly.
Come, Lizzie. Her ladyship demands it.
How does Georgiana get along, Darcy?
She plays very well.
I hope she practices. No excellence can be acquired without constant practice. I have told Mrs. Collins this. Though you have no instrument of your own, you are very welcome to come to Rusting's and play on the piano in the housekeeper's room.
Thank you, your ladyship.
You would be in nobody's way, you know, in that part of the house.
You mean to frighten me, Mr. Darcy, by coming in all your state to hear me, but I won't be alarmed even though your sister does play so well.
I am well enough acquainted with you, Miss Bennet, to know I cannot alarm you even should I wish it.
What was my friend like in Herefordshire?
You look out to know. Prepare yourself for something very dreadful. The first time I saw him at the assembly, he danced with nobody at all. Even the gentlemen were scarce, and there was more than one young lady who was sitting down with her partner.
I know nobody beyond my own party.
True, and nobody can be introduced in ballroom.
Fitzwilliam, I need you.
I do not have the talent of conversing easily with people I have never met before.
Perhaps you should take your aunt's advice and practice.
The doorbell rings in the background. She thinks nothing of it and continues. The maid opens the door to the drawing room and Mr. Darcy enters.
Mr. Darcy, please to be seated. I'm afraid Mr. and Mrs. Collins are gone on business to the village.
This is charming house. I believe my aunt did a great deal to it when Mrs. Collins first arrived.
I believe so. And she could not have bestowed her kindness on a more grateful subject. Shall I call for some tea?
No, thank you. Good day, Miss Bennet. It's been a pleasure.
Charlotte heads to the drawing room where she finds Lizzie still sitting thinking.
What on earth have you done to poor Mr. Darcy?
I have no idea.
Mr. Collins, in his vestments, stands in the pulpit delivering his sermon. Lady Cathrine sits in the front row with her miserable-looking daughter and downtrodden governess. Lizzie sits a little way behind with Colonel Fitzwilliam.
How long do you plan to stay in Kent, Colonel?
As long as Darcy chooses. I'm at his disposal.
Everyone appears to be at his disposal. I wonder he does not marry and secure a lasting convenience of that kind.
She will be a lucky woman.
Really?
Darcy is a most loyal companion. From what I heard on our journey here, he recently came to the rescue of one of his friends just in time.
What happened?
He saved the man from an imprudent marriage.
Who was the man?
His closest friend, Charles Bingley.
Did Mr. Darcy give you his reason for this interference?
There were apparently strong objections to Lady.
What kind of objections? Her lack of fortune?
I think it was her family that was considered unsuitable.
So he separated them?
I believe so. I know nothing else.
Lizzie walks across the park. Anywhere, she hardly cares. She is in a turmoil of misery and fury. It starts to rain. A man approaches across the park. He draws nearer. It's Darcy. Lizzie stiffens. He's hurrying toward her. Sudden, breathless, he comes into the summer house. He is far too agitated to notice her upset face.
Miss Elizabeth, I've struggled in vain, but I can bear it no longer. The past month have been a torment. I came to Rosing with the single object of seeing you. I had to see you. I've against my better judgment, my family expectation, the inferiority of your birth, my rank and circumstance. All those things, but I'm willing to put them aside and ask you to end my agony.
I don't understand.
I love you. Most ardently. Please do me the honor of accepting my hand.
Sir, I appreciate the struggle you have been through, and I'm very sorry to have caused you pain. Believe me, it was unconsciously done.
Is this your reply?
Yes, sir.
Are you laughing at me?
No.
Are you rejecting me?
I'm sure that the feeling which, as you've told me, have hindered your regard will help you in overcoming it.
Might I ask why, with solitude and the fruit at civility and thus repulse?
I might as well inquire why, with so evident a design of insulting me, you choose to tell me that you like me against your better judgment.
Believe me, I didn't.
If I was uncivil, there was some excuse, but I have other reasons, you know I have.
What reasons?
Do you think that anything might tempt me to accept the man who has ruined perhaps forever the happiness of most beloved sister?
Do you deny it, Mr. Darcy, that you've separated a young couple who love each other, exposing your friend to the censor of the world for caprice, and my sister to its derision for disappointed hopes, and involving them both in misery of the acutest kind?
I do not deny it.
How could you do it?
Because I believe your sister indifferent to him.
Indifferent?
I watched them most carefully and realized his attachment was much different than hers.
That's because she's shy.
Bingley too is modest and was persuaded that she didn't feel strongly for him.
Because you suggested it.
I did it for his own good.
My sister hardly shows her true feelings to me. I suppose you suspect that his fortune had some bearing on the matter.
I wouldn't do your sister the dishonor, though it was suggested.
What was?
It was made perfectly clear that an advantageous marriage.
Did my sister give that impression?
No, there was. However, I have to admit that matter of your family.
Our want of connection. Mr. Bingley didn't find himself about that.
No, it was more than that.
How, sir?
It pains me to say this, but it was the lack of your propriety shown by your mother, your three younger sisters, if on occasion your father. Forgive me. You and your sister, I must exclude from this.
And what about Mr. Wickham?
Mr. Wickham?
What excuse can you give for your behavior to him?
You take an eager interest in that gentleman's content.
He told me of his misfortunes.
Oh yes, his misfortunes have been very great indeed.
You have forgotten his change and yet treat him with sarcasm.
So this is your opinion of me. Thank you for explaining softly. Perhaps these offenses might have been overlooked if your pride had not been hurt. But my honesty in admitting scruples about our relationship. Could you expect me to rejoice in the inferiority of your circumstances?
And those are the words of a gentleman. From the first moment I met you, your arrogance and conceit, your selfish disdain of the feelings of others made me realize that you were the last man in the world I could ever be prevailed upon to marry.
Forgive me, madam, for taking up so much of your time.
Lizzie is in the drawing room. She looks at a book on the table. It is Fordyce's sermons. She puts it down and walks to the mirror and stares at herself. The daylight moves and fades as seamlessly the scene turns to night. Lizzie puts her face into her hands and rubs it wearily. When she looks up, Darcy is reflected behind her.
I came to leave you this. I shall not renew the sentiments which were so disgusting to you, but if I may, I will address the two offenses you have laid against me. My father provided for Mr. Wickham a valuable living, but upon his death, however, Mr. Wickham told me that he had no intention of taking orders and would I recompense him to the tune of £3,000 so he could go to town and study the law. This I did, though by now I had some doubts about his character. These were confirmed by reports that he had sunk into a life of idleness, gambling and dissipation. The money was soon used up, whereupon he wrote demanding more money, which I refused, after which he severed all acquaintance. But last summer, he unwillingly obtruded on my notice when he connived a relationship with my sister whom he attempted to persuade to love with him. His objective was her inheritance of £30,000. She was 15. As to the other matter, that of your sister and Miss Bingley, though the motives which governed me made to you appear insufficient, they were in the service of a friend.
Lizzie, are you alright?
I hardly know.
Lizzie arrives back at Longbourn. She climbs down from her carriage and looks at the house from across the moat.
How fortunate you have arrived. Your aunt and uncle are here to deliver Jane from London.
How is Jane?
She's in the drawing room.
Lizzie and Jane sit together. Jane is all smiles, but behind her eyes is a sadness unseen before.
I'm quite over him, Lizzie. If he passed in the street, I would hardly notice.
Oh, Jane.
It's true. So much to entertain. What news from Kent?
Nothing. At least not much to entertain.
Kitty rushes into the drawing room, crying her eyes out. She is followed by Lydia and Mrs. Bennet.
Lizzie, tell Mama, tell her.
Mrs. Foster has invited me.
Why didn't she ask me as well?
Kitty, what's happened?
Because I'm better company.
I'm just as much right as Lydia.
Oh, if I could but go to Brighton.
And more so because I'm 2 years older.
Lydia has been invited to Brighton with the foresters.
A little sea bathing will set me up very nicely.
I shall dine with the officers every night.
I cried for 2 days when Colonel Miller's regiment went away. I thought I should have broke my heart.
Mother, are you all mad?
At the Longbourn Library, Lizzie confronts her father.
Please, Papa, don't let her go.
Lydia will never be easy till she has exposed herself in some public place or other, and we can never expect her to do it with so little inconvenience as under the present circumstances.
If you, dear father, will not take the trouble to check her, she will be fixed forever as the silliest and most determined flirt who ever made her family ridiculous, and Kitty will follow as he always does.
We shall have no peace until she goes.
Peace? Is that all you care about?
Colonel Forsters is a sensible man, and will keep her out of any real mischief, and she is far too poor to be an object of prey to anyone.
Father is dangerous.
I'm sure the officers will find women better worth their while. Let us hope, in fact, that her stay in Brighton will teach her her own insignificance. At any rate, she can hardly grow any worse without authorizing us to look her up for the rest of her life.
No wonder our family is treated with contempt.
Lizzie is preparing a late supper for Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner, her aunt and uncle. Mrs. Gardiner is a kindly woman, and Mary is also helping.
Lizzie, dear, you would be very welcome to accompany us.
Oh yes, we plan to journey through the Peak District. You'd be most welcome.
Oh, the glories of nature! What are men compared to rocks and mountains?
Believe me, men are either eaten up with arrogance or stupidity, and if they are amiable, they are so easily led that they have no minds of their own whatsoever.
Take care, my love. That savors strongly of bitterness.
I saw Mr. Darcy when I was in Rosings.
Why did you not tell me? Did he mention Mr. Bingley?
No, he did not.
The Gardiners and Lizzie are eating supper, an air of high spirits.
Oh, what are men compared to rocks and mountains?
Or courageous that walk.
Where exactly are we?
I think we're quite close to Pemberley.
Mr. Darcy's home.
That's the fellow. Very well stocked lad. I've a hankering to see it.
Oh no, let's not. Oh, he's so... I'd rather not. He's so...
So what?
He's so rich.
By heavens, Lizzie, what a snob you are, objecting to poor Mr. Darcy because of his wealth. The poor man can help it.
He won't be there anyway. These great men are never be at home.
The carriage enters the gates of Pemberley. Lizzie is alert, her eyes bright with curiosity. The parkland is wild and rocky. Dead grass, rooks wheel in the sky, a sense of freedom and liberation. Mrs. Reynolds withers on with descriptions of its room as the party travel the grand staircase. Lizzie falls back as she admires the exquisite painted ceiling.
Keep up!
Lizzie is apart from the rest of the group as she wanders through the stunning collections of marble sculptures.
Is your master much at Pemberley?
Not as much as I would wish, sir, for he dearly loves it here.
If he should marry, you might see more of him.
Yes, madam, but I do not know when that will be. I do not know a lady who is good enough for him.
What do you mean?
Lizzie stops, confronted a marble bust of Darcy. They stand face to face looking at each other. Lizzie listens to Mrs. Reynolds.
I've known Mr. Darcy since he was a boy. He was always a kind and generous person, even then. Not everyone can see it, because he does not make a meal of it like a lot of young men nowadays. But he is the most sweet-tempered and kind-hearted man I have ever known. This is my master, Mr. Darcy.
A handsome face. Lizzie, is it true likeness of him?
Does this young lady know Mr. Darcy?
Only a little.
And do you not think him a handsome man, miss?
Yes. Yes, I dare say he is.
And this is his sister, Miss Georgiana. She plays and sings all day long.
Are they at home?
Lizzie turns to find that the Gardiners and Mrs. Reynolds have disappeared. Lizzie wanders into the drawing room in search of the others. The music is louder in his room. She walks to the French windows and looks out. In the bright sunlight, the view of the gardens and valley beyond is exquisite. Suddenly, Lizzie recognizes the tune. Through the gap, she sees Georgiana Darcy, a beautiful 16 years old, playing the piano with great fluency and passion. Captivated by the music, Lizzie stops and listens. A man steps into view. Lizzie strains to see him, but he is obscured by shadows. As they embrace, the sunlight hits his face. It's Darcy. He turns and sees Lizzie watching him. For a moment, they both stare at each other, frozen with surprise. Lizzie turns and runs across the room and out through the French windows.
Miss Elizabeth?
I thought you were in London.
No, I'm not.
No.
I came here a day early. Some business with my steward.
We wouldn't have come had we known you were here. I'm visiting Derbyshire with my uncle and aunt.
And are you having a pleasant trip?
Very pleasant. Tomorrow we go to Matlock.
Tomorrow? Are you staying at Clampton?
Yes, at the Rose and Crown. I'm so sorry to intrude. They said the house was open for visitors. I had no idea.
May I see you to the village?
No, I'm very fond of walking.
Yes. Yes, I know.
Goodbye, Mr. Darcy.
It's that night. Lizzie comes downstairs for supper and stops through a gap in the door to the restaurant. She sees Mr. Darcy talking to her aunt and uncle.
I shall send my carriage at noon after a moment.
Lizzie, I've just met Mr. Darcy. Why didn't you tell us you had seen him? He's asked us to dine with him tomorrow. He was very cheerful, was he not?
Very civil.
Not at all like you painted him.
To dine with him?
There is something pleasing about his mouth when he speaks.
You don't mind delaying our journey for another day?
He particularly wishes you to meet his sister.
His sister?
Lizzie is filled with trepidation. We can almost feel her heart racing. The footman opens the double doors to reveal the magnificent drawing room. Darcy is there. Darcy's sister, Georgiana, plays the piano.
My sister, Miss Georgiana.
Mrs. Elizabeth, my brother has told me so much about you. I feel as we are friends already.
Oh, thank you. What a beautiful pianoforte.
My brother gave it to me. He shouldn't have.
Yes, I should.
Oh, very well then.
She's easily persuaded, is she not?
Your unfortunate brother once had to put up with my playing for a whole evening.
But he said you play so well.
Then he has perjured himself most profoundly.
I said play quite well.
Oh, quite well is not very well. I am satisfied.
Mr. Gardiner, are you fond of fishing?
Oh, very much, sir.
Can I persuade you to accompany me to the lake this afternoon? It's very well stocked, and its occupant left in peace for far too long.
I would be delighted.
Do you play duets, Miss Lizzie?
Only one force.
Brother, you must force her.
The party arrived back at the inn.
Splendid fishing, good company. What a capital fellow.
Thank you so much, Mr. Darcy.
A letter for you, madam.
It's from Jane.
Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner are sitting, looking grim. Darcy is passing, equally concerned. Lizzie walks in with the letter. She tries to speak, chokes a sob and walks out again. With great difficulty, Darcy restrains himself from following her. He sits down. Lizzie comes in again. He stands up. She waves the letter about and tries to speak once more, but has to leave the room.
It is the most dreadful news. Lydia has run away with Mr. Wickham. They are gone together from Brighton to Lord's Nowhere. She has no money. The connections, I fear she is lost forever.
This is my fault. If only I had exposed Wickham when I should.
No, it is my fault.
I might have prevented all of it merely by being open with my sisters.
Has anything been done to recover her?
Father has gone to London, but I know very well that nothing can be done. We have not the smallest hope.
Would I could help you?
So I think it is too late.
This is grave indeed. I will leave you. Goodbye.
I'm afraid we must go at once. I will join Mr. Bennet and find Lydia before she ruins the family forever.
The Gardiners carried racing through the night with Lizzie in the inside, crying silently. At the Longbourn house, in the Mrs. Bennet's bedroom, Lizzie, Jane, Mary, and Kitty are gathered round Mrs. Bennet, who has taken to her bed.
Why did the forces let her out of their sight? I always said they were unfit to have charge of her.
And now she's ruined.
You are ruined. Who will take you now with the fallen sister? Poor Mr. Bennet will now have to fight the perverse Wickham and then be killed.
He hasn't found him yet, Ma.
And then the Mr. Collins will turn us out before he is called in his grave.
Do not alarm, Mama. Our uncle is helping in the search.
Lydia must know that his will do to my nerve. Such fluttering and spasms all over me. My baby, Lydia, my baby. How could she do such a thing to her poor mama?
You can't do that.
Don't touch a baby.
Kitty, give it to me.
No,
What is it for? It's addressed to Papa.
it's in Uncle's writing.
The girls rush into the outside of the house after they hear the carriage is coming. Turns out that is Mr. Bennet.
Papa, there's a letter.
Let me catch my breath.
It's in Uncle's writing.
He has found them.
Are they married?
Wait, I can make out his script.
Oof, give it to me.
Are they married?
They will be if Father will settle 100 pounds a year, that is Wickham condition.
100 pounds?
You will agree to this, Father?
Of course I'll agree. God knows how much your uncle must have laid on that wretched man.
What do you mean, Father?
No man in his senses would marry Lydia under so slight temptation as 100 pounds a year. Your uncle must have been very generous.
Do you think it's a large sum?
Wickham's a fool if he accepts less than 10,000 pounds.
10,000? Heaven forbid.
Father!
Close on Mrs. Bennet's face as she springs out of bed, pure, triumphant joy.
Lydia married, and at 15 too. Ring the bell, Kitty. I must put on my things and tell Lady Lucas. Oh, to see her face, and tell the 7th day we'll have a bowl of punch.
We should thank our uncle, Mama.
And so he should help. He's much richer than us, and he hasn't got any children. And now they're married.
Is that all you think about?
When you have 5 daughters, Lizzie, tell me what else will occupy your thought, and then perhaps you will understand.
You don't know what he's like.
Lydia's triumphant face, the cat that's got the scream. She climbs out of a carriage with Wickham. Her mother kisses her evasively.
Mama, we passed Sarah Sims in her carriage, so I took off my glove and let my hand just rest on the window frame, so she might see the ring, and then bowed and smiled like anything.
They are taking their seats for dinner.
You must all go to Brighton, for that is the place to get husbands. I hope you have half of my good luck.
Lydia?
I've been enlisted in a regiment in the north of England, sir.
I'm glad to hear of it.
Near Newcastle. We shall travel there next week.
Can I come and stay with you?
That is out of the question.
Well, Monday morning came and I was in such a fuss.
I don't want to hear.
There was my aunt, preaching and talking away just as if she was reading a sermon. She was hurried, unpleasant.
Can't you understand why?
But I didn't hear a word because I was thinking of my dear Wickham. I longed to know whether he would be married in his blue coat.
The north of England, I believe. Both some spectacular scenery.
And then my uncle was called away from the church on business, and I thought, who is to be our best man if he doesn't come back? Lucky he did come back, or I would have had to ask Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Darcy?
Oh, I forgot. I shouldn't have said a word.
Mr. Darcy was at your wedding.
He was the one that discovered us. He knew where to find Mr. Wickham, you see. But don't tell anyone. He told me not to tell.
Mr. Darcy?
Oh, stop it, Lizzie. Mr. Darcy is not half as high and mighty as you sometimes.
Lydia and Wickham are leaving. Mr. Bennet stands at a distance. Mrs. Bennet sobs as Giles takes out the luggage.
Write to me often, my dear.
Married women never have much time for writing. My sisters may write to me.
No, I dare say you won't. When I married your father, there didn't seem to be enough hour in a day.
Well, my sisters may write to me, for they'll have nothing else to do.
There's nothing so bad as parting with one children. One seems so forlorn without them.
Mrs. Bennet is genuinely brave. Lizzie is about to say something, but thinks the better of it and instead gives her mother a hug. Lizzie and Jane are out shopping with their mother and sisters.
I can't imagine what your father does with all that ink.
Mrs. Bennet, did you hear the news, madam? Mr. Bingley is returning to Netherfield.
Mr. Bingley?
Mrs. Nichols is ordering a haunch of pork. She expects him tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Not that I care about it. Mr. Bingley is nothing to us, and I'm sure I never want to see him again. No, she will not mention a word about it. It's quite certain he is coming?
Yes, madam. I believe he is alone. His sister remains in town.
Why he thinks we should be in tears, I have no idea. Come along, girls. Let's go home at once. Marry and tell Mr. Bennet, the impudent of the man. I wonder if dare have show his face.
It is alright, Lizzie. I'm just glad that he's come alone, because then we shall less of him. Not that I'm afraid of myself, but I dread the other people remarks.
Mr. Bingley walks toward Longbourn, a look of slight trepidation in his eyes. Darcy now comes into view, walks alongside him. They cross the mud bridge. Mary is practicing her scales. Jane and Lizzie are sitting at their work, with their mother, Kitty, rushes in.
He is here! He is here! He's at the door, Mr. Bingley.
Oh my goodness, everybody behave naturally. Whatever you do, do not appear overbearing.
Look, there is someone with him, Mr. What's his name? The pompous one from before.
Mr. Darcy, indeed. The very insolence of it. What does he think of coming here?
Mama!
Stop that racket and sit down. Find yourself some work. Oh Lord, I shall have a seizure, I'm sure I shall.
They sit there, frozen, pretending to sew. The drawing room door opens and Mrs. Hill shows the two men.
How very glad we are to see you, Mr. Bingley. There are a great many changes since you went away. Miss Lucas is married and settled, and one of my daughters too. You will have seen in the papers, though it was not put as ought to have been, very short, nothing about her family.
I did hear of it, and offer my congratulations.
But it's very hard to have my Lydia taken away from me. Mr. Wickham has been transferred to the Newcastle. Wherever that is, thank heaven he has some friends.
Do you hope to stay long in the country, Mr. Bingley?
Just a few weeks, for the shooting.
When you have killed all your own birds, Mr. Bingley, I beg you will come here and shoot as many as you please.
Thank you.
Miss Bennet will be vastly happy to oblige you, and will save all the best of the corvées for you.
Excellent.
Are you well, Mr. Darcy?
Quite well, thank you.
Well, I hope the weather stays fine for your sport.
I return to town tomorrow.
So soon?
My Jane look well, does she not?
She does indeed. Well, I must be going. I suppose, Darcy, it was very pleasant to see you all again. Miss Elizabeth, Miss Jane.
You must come again, for when you were in town last winter you promised to take a family dinner with us. I have not forget to see at least 3 courses.
Bingley and Darcy take their leave, leaving the Bennets sitting in silence, all looking at one another. Bingley is pacing backwards and forwards in despair, muttering to himself. Darcy looks at him in extreme frustration.
We were going to walk in and she was going to say, sit down.
No.
No. So, I feel, it's a disaster, isn't it? It's Miss Bennet.
Mr. Bingley.
I just go in and I'll just say it.
Yes,
say it.
Exactly.
Oh God.
The family is now spread around the room. Kitty is at the window. Jane and Lizzie are sat close on a sofa. Mrs. Bennet muttering things like most peculiar to everyone who will listen. Mary plinking out a dreary arpeggio or two.
Well, I'm glad that's over. We cannot meet as indifferent acquaintance.
Oh yes.
You cannot think me so weak as to be in danger now.
I think you are in a great danger of making him as much in love with you as ever.
I'm sorry though, that he can miss Mr. Darcy.
Don't say that.
Why ever not?
Oh Jane, I have been so blind.
What do you mean?
It's him! He's back, he's come again.
Everyone has regained the same positions. They hear Bingley's voice at the door and he comes, for once absolutely in control of his facial coloring.
I know this is all very untoward, but I would like to request the privilege of speaking to Miss Jane. Alone.
Everybody to the kitchen, immediately, except you, Jane, of course. Oh, Mr. Bingley, it's so good to see you again so soon.
First, I have to tell you that I have been an unmitigated and comprehensive ass.
Mrs. Bennet, Kitty, Mary and Mr. Bennet are all jostling for a position all the door in order to over her events inside. Lizzie is apart from her family. She cannot bear to be there. She walks down the corridor and out of the house into the garden. Through a window, she sees Bingley on one knee. Her eyes fill with tears as she walks away from the house.
Yes, 1,000 times. Yes.
Thank the Lord for that. I thought it would never happen.
Through the window, we see Mrs. Bennet lying in her bed, while Mr. Bennet lies, fully clothed on top of the bed covers.
I'm sure they will do well together. Their tempers are much alike. They will be cheated assiduously by their servants, and be so generous with the rest. They will always exceed their income.
Exceed their income? He has 5,000 a year. I knew she could not be so beautiful for nothing.
Jane and Lizzie lie in bed.
Can you die of happiness? You know, he was totally ignorant of my being in town last spring.
How did he come for it?
He thought me indifferent.
Unfathomable.
Not though poisoned by his prisoners' sister.
Bravo! That is the most unforgiving speech you've ever met.
Oh, Lizzie, if I could but see you so happy, if there was such another man for you.
Perhaps Mr. Collins has a cousin.
Mr. Bennet, Mrs. Bennet, and the girls, lit by only candles, have gathered. The door bangs again.
Maybe he's changed his mind.
Timidly, Mr. Bennet opens the door, revealing a barefoot-looking Lady Cathrine de Bourgh. Everyone gasps.
Lady Cathrine!
The rest of your offspring, I presume.
All but one. The youngest has been lately married, your ladyship, and my eldest was only proposed yesterday afternoon.
You have a very small garden, madam.
Could I offer you a cup of tea, perhaps, your ladyship?
Absolutely not! I must speak to Miss Bennet alone, as a matter of urgency. You can be at no loss, Miss Bennet, to be understand why I am here.
Indeed, you are mistaken. I cannot account for this honor at all.
Miss Bennet, I warn you, I am not to be trifled with. A report of a most alarming nature has reached me that you intend to be united with my nephew, Mr. Darcy. I know this to be a scandalous falsehood. Do not wishing to be injured him by supposing it possible, I instantly set off to make my sentiments known.
If you believe it impossible, I wonder you took the trouble of coming so far.
To hear it contradicted, Miss Bennet.
Your coming here will be rather confirmation, surely, if indeed such a report exists.
If! Do you pretend to be ignorant of it? Has it not been industriously calculated by yourself?
I have never heard of it.
And can you declare that there is no foundation of it?
I do not pretend to possess equal frankness with your ladyship. You may ask the question which I may not choose to answer.
This is not to be borne. Has my nephew made you an offer of marriage?
Your ladyship declared it to be impossible.
Let me be understood. Mr. Darcy is engaged to my daughter. Now what have you to say?
Only this. If that is the case, you can have no reason to suppose he will make an offer to me.
Oh, selfish girl. This union has been planned since their infancy. Do you think it can be prevented by a young woman of inferior birth, and whose own sister's elopement resulted in the scandalous departure of marriage, only to achieve at the expense of your uncle? Heavens and earth! Are the shades of Pemberley to be thus polluted? Now tell me once and for all, are you engaged to him?
I'm not.
And will you promise never to enter into such an engagement?
I will not, and I certainly never shall. You have insulted me in every possible way and can now have nothing further to say. I must ask you to leave immediately. Good night.
I have never been thus treated in my entire life.
Lizzie, what on earth is going on?
Just a small misunderstanding.
Lizzie!
For once in your life, just leave me alone.
Lizzie sits at the table in her nightie, her father's great coat slung around her shoulders. The candle gutters out. She looks out at the green dawn. Lizzie creeps out into the garden and wanders through the early morning mist as the sun starts to rise. Lizzie has lost track at herself and is walking beyond the long-burn grounds. The mist is starting to evaporate, and through the departing strength, she sees a figure emerging. She stops, suddenly conscious of herself and frightened. Then she realizes it is Darcy, unshaven, red-eyed, slightly wild-looking, but still Darcy.
I couldn't sleep.
Right, my aunt.
Yes, she was here.
How can I ever make amends for such behavior?
After what you have done for Lydia and for all I know, for Jane also, it is I who should be making amends.
You must know. Surely you must know that it was all for you. You are too generous to travel with me. I believe you spoke with my aunt last night, and it has taught me to hope, as I had scarcely allowed myself before. If your feelings are still what they were last April, tell me so at once. My affection and wishes are unchanged, but one word from you will silence me forever. If, however, your feelings have changed, I would have to tell you, you have bewitched me, body and soul, and I love, and love, and love you, and never wish to be parted from you from this day on.
Well, then, your hands are cold.
Shut the door, please, Elizabeth. Lizzie, are you out of your senses? I thought you had a man.
No, Papa.
He is rich, to be sure, and you will have more fine carriages than Jane. But will that make you happy?
Have you no other objection than your belief in my indifference?
None at all. We all know him to be a proud, unpleasant sort of fellow. But this would be nothing if you really liked him.
I do like him. I love him. He's not proud. I was wrong. I was entirely wrong about him. You don't know him, Papa. If I told you what he's really like, what he's done.
What has he done?
At a window, Mrs. Bennet and the girls watch as Darcy, in an agony, paces up and down the lawn. He looks at the library window.
But she doesn't like him. I thought she doesn't like him.
So did I. So did we all. We must have been wrong.
Wouldn't be the first time, will it?
No, nor the last. Ardelia.
Good Lord, I must pay him back.
No, you mustn't tell anyone. He wouldn't want it. We misjudge him. Me more than anyone. In every way, not just in this matter. I've been nonsensical. He's been a fool about Jen. About so many things. Then so have I. He and I are so similar. We're both so stubborn. Oh, Papa.
You really do love him, don't you?
Very much.
I cannot believe that anyone can deserve you. But it seems I'm overruled. So I heartily give my consent. I could not have parted with you, my Lizzie, to anyone less worthy.
Oh, thank you, Papa.
And if any young men come for Mary or Kitty, send them in, for I am quite at my leisure.
A man's great coat walking away and reveals Lizzie's hair caught up in the color of the coat as she turns to someone with a heart-stopping smile. Darcy at her side, in nice shirts and breeches, both of them looking as though they have just flung themselves out of bed, which is precisely the case. Darcy helps Lizzie clamber onto a fallen tree which they both sit astride, bare feet swinging, looking alternatively at the amazing views of Pemberley and each other.
How are you today, my dear?
Very well. Only I wish you would not call me my dear.
Why?
It's what my father always calls my mother when he's cross about something.
What animals am I, Lord?
Let me think. Lizzie for every day, my pearl for Sundays, and God is divine, but only on special occasions.
And what shall I call you when I'm cross, Mrs. Darcy?
No. You can only call me Mrs. Darcy when you're entirely and perfectly and incandescently happy.
And how are you this morning, Mrs. Darcy?
Lizzie smiles and he kisses every inch of her face, and in between each kiss, murmurs Mrs. Darcy, seeing them now looking for all the world like two children, utterly at ease and with nothing to hide from each other.